We've already discussed visual cues and context strategies. Using language to make new language comprehensible is a third type of strategy that's particularly common as students pass beyond first or second grade. One reason is that by then, students have gained enough comprehension skills in their new language to be able to understand paraphrases, explanations, or definitions. Another reason is that as students move through the elementary school grades, they'll be encountering an increasing number of abstract concepts that can't be visualized with pictures or acted out. These abstract concepts, like justice and democracy in social studies, or force in science, will be occurring with greater frequency as students progress academically.
而瓶子里边本来就有什么？这里边的气就产生了一个向外的什么力，所以把这个小球就推出来。
As immersion teachers, we have to make sure that our students will be ready to understand such abstract concepts as students meet them in the curriculum. It makes sense then that the specific language strategies that you use in your classroom will depend on your students' comprehension skills. When you're teaching beginning students, you'll need to speak more slowly and more clearly than you would when talking to an adult native speaker of your language.
我们中文管它叫毛豆。毛豆呢，因为它
As students show you they're understanding you, you'll begin gradually to speak faster, but always be sure that your students are understanding you.
然后是
When introducing new or difficult vocabulary or language structures, it's often helpful to slow the rate of delivery and use your voice to emphasize the new words or phrases.
gorila. Gorila. Muy bien, mira.
Clearly enunciate them so that your students can hear the proper pronunciation and use of the new words.
我的风筝是一张脸。
Much like gestures can be effective to give meaning to unfamiliar words, so too can your tone of voice when what you say matches the way you say it.
猫妈妈很高兴，小猫不高兴，不高兴。
Research shows that when introducing new words or phrases, it takes many, many repetitions for students to learn that word or phrase.
先
So, it's important to use new keywords and phrases in meaningful, purposeful, contextualized ways over and over.
起床还是先穿衣服？先去厕所还是先去刷牙？你是先做什么？20。先是20还是30？20。哦，先是20。铅笔，告诉刘老师听，先是什么，再是什么，然后是什么，最后是什么？刘老师这里也写了，有花苞、种子、发芽、开花。好，请个同学告诉刘老师听，先是什么？先是什么？
It's important to use many questioning sequences to make sure that your students understand you. Begin by asking questions that can be answered by yes or no.
兔子会游吗？不会。兔子会飞吗？不是。兔子会爬吗？不是。那兔子会不会走呢？会走，是不是呢？
Or by nonverbal signs, such as using a thumbs up or down, or raising students' hands when they mean yes.
¿Vivirá en Australia? ¿En Asia? ¿En América del Norte? ¿En África? Sí. Vive en África.
Either or questions can follow yes or no questions and are a bit more challenging because they require production of new language from students. Nonetheless, either or questions are a helpful strategy when students are just acquiring new terminology or structures because the answer is embedded in the question, Here are two examples. Which part of the plant brings food to the leaves, the seeds or the roots? Did the plant grow or did it dry up? Like either-or questions, multiple choice questions in which the answer is A or B or C provide support to students because the language needed for the answer is built into the choices. As your students' oral proficiency increases, you'll want to make sure you ask more open-ended questions to check for comprehension of input. When we ask open-ended questions, we link checks for comprehension with students' ever-increasing oral production skills. That helps us achieve one of our major goals, that is, developing high levels of language proficiency.
Qui peut me donner une phrase avec langue?
Tout le monde dans sa classe sait la langue française. Tout le monde sait la langue espagnole. C'est français, c'est franc.
You'll constantly be introducing language that's new and unknown to your students. As students progress in their language development, language itself will be a way of making input comprehensible.
Je parle une langue.
Je parle une langue. Je vais prendre cette phrase parce que tout le monde parle une langue. Très bien.
You can explain a new word or expression by saying it another way, called paraphrasing. For example, we can say that comprehensible input is another way of saying language that we make understandable. Use language your students already know to introduce new words and expressions.
如果没有阳光，怎么办？如果没有太阳，怎么办？
In addition to paraphrase, you can also use language to provide explanations or definitions. You could explain that liberty is when people have freedom. Or you might define a new term like carnivore as an animal that eats the meat of other animals. Another way of using language to make input comprehensible is defining by examples and non-examples. For instance, water, milk, and oil are all examples of liquids. Rocks are not an example of liquids. Rocks are an example of solids. So when you're introducing new words, define them by example or demonstration, using words in the target language that your students already understand. It's important to always be aware of the ever-changing proficiency level of your students. You'll want to constantly challenge your students with new and different vocabulary and language structures. You'll be stretching and refining their language by incorporating new language with input you're confident students can already understand. Comprehensible input is an interactive process. You'll always want to make sure that your students understand what you're saying, so you need to use active comprehension checks. And the key word here is active. Don't just ask students if they understand, because even if they don't understand, many students will probably say yes anyway. You'll want to have students actively demonstrate that they understand what you're saying. Ask students to give you visual cues. You can have students act out what you say or point to or touch objects in the classroom, or you can even have students draw pictures to show you their understanding. As your students' proficiency level increases, you'll want your students to be able to let you know with increasing sophistication that they understand what you've been saying. So try to find creative ways that allow students to confirm that they've understood what you have said. You might ask them for clarification, such as, "Who can tell me what I just said?" Or, "Can you help me understand what you just said? Can you tell me more about your answer?" Ask students to begin to explain something in their own words.
Est-ce que comme j'ai disposé les chiffres, c'est correct?
Non! C'est droit.
Abby, regardez-le bien, levez la main.
Tu dois mettre le 6 en bas de le 0 parce que le 0 ne fait pas quelque chose. Et comme tu sais, tu ne peux pas faire quelque chose avec.
Et alors, où est-ce que je mets le 8? Parce que tu as dit?
Ici.
Très bien.
When introducing new words to your students, it's often tempting to use English to define new words or to explain complex concepts. Research on early immersion classrooms is very clear that language acquisition occurs best when students are immersed completely in the target language. One reason you need to avoid translating or asking students to translate for you is that students quickly figure out that they don't have to try to get meaning from what you say. It's challenging for students when they have to work to make meaning from what they're hearing in a new language. If students know you'll explain anything they don't understand in English or will translate for them, they probably won't have much reason to work on understanding you when you speak. After all, why work hard if someone will help you avoid all that hard work?
什么是保护？我们要保
As you can imagine, making abstract content understandable to students is not only vitally important for students to learn their new language, it's also important for students to learn the content. While we often think of comprehensible input as language supported through visuals, teachers in the upper grades particularly need to use many strategies, not just visuals, to make sure their students learn what they need to learn.